tiny seeds were taking root, learning how to grow yet bear sweet fruit.
There's always that one house. You pull up in the spring, and before you even get out of the truck, you see it, right near the front. Not huge, not trying to be the main thing, but it kind of steals the whole yard anyway. Soft white, almost floating, like it showed up before everything else was ready. And somebody usually says it, "Can we get one of those?"
Yeah, and a lot of times, that tree is flowering dogwood, our native dogwood. Cornus Florida. It's the one people point at from the truck window. They don't know the name yet, but they know the feeling.
It doesn't feel flashy, that's the thing. It feels like it belongs there, like the yard made room for it instead of the other way around.
And that same tree people love? It's also one of the easiest to mess up if you ignore placement. Native dogwood has that layered branch structure, almost horizontal, kind of relaxed, not stiff. In spring, those blooms are what stop people. Then fall comes, and it shows up again with deep red color, sometimes a little purple, plus those small red berries.
So it gives twice, first the bloom, then the memory of it.
Exactly. But here's the part that matters more than the bloom. This tree does not want to bake in hot afternoon sun. Morning sun, usually fine. But if you stick it out in the middle of a wide open front yard and let that afternoon heat pound it all day, you're asking for trouble.
That phrase, hot afternoon sun, that's the part people skip. They see the white bloom and assume beauty means easy.
Yep, and that's where the failure happens. Not all at once either. Sometimes it looks okay for a year, maybe two, and then it just never really gets going. Starts thinning out, starts struggling. If deer are around and it's young, that's another problem. You've got to protect it early or you're rolling the dice.
So the tension is built right into the request. The tree everyone wants is also the tree that asks for a little care, a little shelter, a little honesty.
That's it. Native dogwood is beautiful, but it's not a put it anywhere and hope tree. When it's in the right spot, it's hard to replace. When it's in the wrong one, it lets you know.
And then comes the next sentence. Same client, same yard, same little pause. And they ask, okay, is there something like that but easier?
That's usually where Kusa dogwood comes in, Cornus Kusa. This is the option when somebody likes the dogwood look but doesn't want quite as much risk.
I always think of it as a little more composed. The native dogwood feels loose, almost airy. Kusa feels more upright when it's young, more structure, more intention.
Yeah, upright is the right word. And the big practical shift is sun tolerance. Kusa can handle brighter exposure better than native dogwood. That doesn't mean abuse it. It still needs decent soil, still doesn't want to sit in water, but it's more forgiving.
More forgiving. That's such a useful phrase because it's not hype. You're not saying perfect. You're saying the margin for error is a little wider.
Exactly. And that wider margin is why you'll see it near patios, in front yards with more exposure, places where a native dogwood would be kind of a gamble. The bloom timing shifts too. Kusa flowers later, after the leaves are already out, so it doesn't hit that same early spring moment, but it does stretch the season.
And the bark starts doing its own quiet work over time, right? That peeling, textured bark people don't expect at first.
Yep, that bark becomes part of the appeal. It's not just the flowers. And same deal on deer. Especially when it's young, you still want protection. It's not immune, just not as sensitive overall.
So if native dogwood is the beautiful answer with stricter conditions, Kusa is the similar answer with a little more grace built in.
That's a good way to say it. Same general idea, different tolerance. But placement still matters. Better sun tolerance is not permission to stop paying attention.
Now picture a different part of the property. Lower spot, maybe after a storm, water sits there longer than it should. Most trees hear that sentence and quietly start failing in advance.
Yeah, a wet spot will humble a lot of plant choices real fast. But river birch? River birch is one of the best answers you've got there.
And you notice it first by the bark, not the leaves. The bark, it peels and curls, tan, cinnamon, almost cream in places, like the tree is always in the middle of becoming something.
That peeling bark is the signature. And this tree actually handles wet soil way better than most. That's the practical win. Where other trees struggle, river birch can settle in and move.
Move is the word, even the shape feels in motion.
Especially when it's multi-trunked, which is how you'll see it a lot. Multiple trunks give it more presence, more texture, but it's not a formal shade tree. That's important. The canopy is lighter, more filtered shade, more movement in the wind, less of that big, dense block of cover.
So if somebody hears tree and imagines one giant heavy umbrella, this isn't that story.
Right, this is not deep shade. This is texture, speed, bark, movement. And it grows faster than a lot of other options, so people usually feel like they're getting progress. But, and this is the part you can't skip, If you plant river birch in a hot, dry lawn, it'll tell on you pretty quick. Wrong site, wrong result.
That contrast matters. Wet soil, strong answer, hot, dry lawn, bad fit.
Exactly. And deer can still bother it early, so same common sense protection when it's young. But for that lower, wetter part of a property, river birch is often one of the cleanest answers on the board.
I think this is the part people slowly learn if they stay in the work long enough. When someone points at a tree and says, I want that, they're almost never only talking about the tree, they're talking about a feeling, a shape, a moment they noticed. But the real question is, what?
Yeah, the real question is, do you have the conditions for that tree to succeed? Because native dogwood, Coosa dogwood, river birch, those aren't just looks. They're fits. Afternoon sun matters. Wet soil matters. Decent soil matters. Deer pressure matters.
So the second part of the request is the part we have to hear, even when it isn't spoken out loud.
Right. I want that usually has a hidden ending, and I want it to live. That's the part that changes the conversation.
And maybe that's the deeper craft here, not just naming what something is, but noticing what it needs.
That's how you get better results. You don't just match the picture, you match the place. If somebody wants the dogwood look, maybe native is perfect, maybe Coosa makes more sense. If they've got that wet lower area, maybe river birch is the answer. Same client wish, different realities.
So next time someone points and says, I want that, maybe we pause a little longer, maybe we ask what the sun does there, maybe we ask where the water sits, maybe we ask what's been getting chewed by deer.
Yeah, before you choose the tree, ask about the spot. That's the move.
Because there's usually more to hear than the first sentence, and better outcomes start when we learn to hear the second part too.
The roots run deep, our foundation true. Ready for the sunshine and the morning dew.